Dang. Oh no. Back in the day I worked in retail and I used to work some pretty late shifts, and I remember hated going to smoke at night because all of the areas, the designated smoking locations or whatever, were always poorly lit, and sometimes they had people in the parking lot or cars parked in the parking lot that would kind of creep me out. Like, what were they doing in there? Were they smoking too? Were they just taking a break from driving? I don't know. It was always a weird question. And when my wife and I go out, like to restaurants or whatever in the evening, we always park underneath the big parking lot lights, like the street lamp style lights that are in the parking lots, because it just feels more secure in there. So weird cars in parking lots always freaked me out when I got off late at something. But going into a situation that you felt it was just creepy, like one car parked next to you in the middle of the night when you by yourself at an office, would be very unnerving. I'd probably be tempted to call the police and just tell them that I needed an escort out, or there was a strange guy in the parking lot, especially if I worked there and I felt like I was entitled, you know, for my security. So Animated Horror Flicks just put out an animation about a creepy night at the office with a situation similar to this. So if you guys want to support the animation community, head on over to Animated Horror Flicks' channel, click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and if you like reaction videos just like this, click the subscribe button on this video as well. Let's get into the animation. Creepy night at the office. Here we go. I love his art style. It's gorgeous.
This creepy story happened to me about 6 months ago while I was still working at my previous job. And I thought I would share it while it still remains fresh in my mind.
Previous job, okay.
So I was at the office one day. I was working late and the rest of my co-workers were heading out to share a taxi home. So I was going to be the only one left in the building since our boss hadn't come into work for the past few days.
I always worked at small little towns and cities. Like, we didn't have the use of taxis, and Uber wasn't really a thing back in the day when I used to work out in the field. But everybody has their own cars around here. Very few people use taxis and Uber.
I thought it was an interesting coincidence that he stopped showing up on Valentine's Day, but no one really knew for sure if he was seeing anyone. Although he had been coming into work on his motorcycle a lot more often lately. Whatever that was supposed to mean.
So the boss stopped.
I didn't really care too much about all the gossip, but I was getting kind of tired of the whole thing since it seemed it was all anyone could talk about at the time.
Isn't that just like, oh, it makes me sick, man. People, that's like, they, in office environments, they just dwell on drama. Like, they have to just talk about who's sleeping with who and who's doing what with somebody else. It's oh man. Now, you go to work every day and you share things with your co-workers about your personal lives and stuff like that, you know, like I share stuff with you about personal lives, and all of a sudden, if I stop talking about those things, I admit it makes you raise an eyebrow, but all of this speculation and talking behind people's back is so nasty, man.
The strong scent of perfume in the office and the mystery gift on his desk also had everyone talking. It was actually pretty cool not having the boss around at first, but unfortunately, the security alarm had started acting up and I needed his signature to approve the cost to call someone to fix it. Also, the key to the supply room went missing since he left, and he hadn't returned any of my messages about that or the alarm. Which was surprising because he was the kind of person that would generally take things very seriously.
It's always
Just as my colleagues were about to leave the building, they asked if there was anyone waiting up for me because there was someone sitting inside a car in the parking lot outside. They seemed genuinely unnerved when I told them that I wasn't expecting anyone, and they all decided to quietly leave together and asked me to be careful. What was really strange is that whoever it was had no business being there, but I initially brushed it off and thought the car would be gone by the time I got around to observing the parking lot for myself.
But it wasn't.
About half an hour later, I received a message on my phone from Josh, one of my co-workers from earlier. Truth be told, I was so focused on my work, I had completely forgotten about the matter.
Happens all the time.
I didn't respond to his message right away, but eventually I did find an excuse to pass in front of my boss's office overlooking the parking lot.
So it's like 9 p.m. right now.
I went into his office and peeked through the window.
Car's still there?
As I slowly pulled down the blinds, I was surprised to see someone still waiting in the parking lot.
Right next to his car?
This was highly unusual, and it kind of creeped me out since the car was parked so close to mine.
Yeah, I'm getting a real bad vibe right now, man. Like, I'm not saying that the guy has any kind of intentions, but you gotta wonder at this point, like, the guy's been sitting in his car for around an hour at least, because it was right after 8 when the group left, the rest of his coworkers left, and now it's almost 9 o'clock and the guy is still sitting in the car. Like, that's just kind of weird. Especially, this is a remote parking lot. This isn't someplace that it's just like on the main street. You could see like it's right next to grass and stuff. They had to come into this parking lot and park specifically right next to your car. Huh, weird.
I couldn't really make out who it was, but as I looked closer I could see it was definitely a man smoking a cigarette.
Okay.
There was nothing familiar about him, and I didn't recognize the car. Since I was the only person at the office, I couldn't shake this uncanny feeling that he really was waiting up for me for some reason.
Just call the cops,
and that
man.
it would be impossible to get to my car without him seeing me.
Just call the police.
I quickly returned to my desk and grabbed my phone so I could take a photo and confirm with Josh that it was the same car from before. While I waited for Josh to respond, the gift on the desk suddenly caught my eye. I thought that perhaps it was a perfume, which would explain the strong scent inside the office lately. But I was also curious to know if it really was a Valentine's gift, and why it was still on his desk. It seemed strange to leave it at the office.
He wasn't
As I
there,
slowly
though.
opened the box, I was surprised to see a passport inside.
Oh.
Suddenly I received a new message on my phone. I was initially confused by his response, but when I looked closely at the photo again, I could see that the car was empty. I was so quick to take the photo I hadn't even noticed. I immediately took another peek through the window. The car was still there, but with no one inside. It seemed so strange to abandon your car in the middle of the night, especially on a cold February night.
Did somebody just pick you up?
It was getting late and I still had a few more hours of work to catch up on, so I decided to get back to it, hoping the car would be gone by the time I finished up.
Alright.
A few hours later, I got a little curious as to why Josh hadn't followed up with any other messages, which is when I realized that the battery on my phone was dead.
Dang.
I was too tired to stick around to recharge my phone at the office, so I closed up and cautiously descended into the parking lot.
Oh no.
As I left the building, I felt a sudden chill, but I didn't know if it was from the cold air or from seeing the same old car still parked and abandoned outside. A couple of things started running through my head at that point, like maybe he had too much to drink and decided to walk home, or the car was extremely low on gas. But deep down, I had a bad feeling.
Yeah.
As I approached the abandoned car, I could see cigarette butts scattered all over the ground,
He had
everywhere,
been smoking there forever.
suggesting that he had been waiting for a lot longer than I thought.
Uh-huh.
It seemed very bizarre to just take off after waiting for so long.
Go in your car, dude. Get in your
I
car.
proceeded to my car and took one final look back at the office, which suddenly reminded me of the passport on the desk that I had completely forgotten to place back inside the box after getting distracted by my phone.
No.
Knowing that my boss would totally flip out if he found out that someone had been snooping around his office, I reluctantly headed back into the building, since I had already worked so late and I really didn't want to have to wake up extra early the next morning just to
That's when stuff is going down. I knew it. That's not good.
make sure I'd be the first to arrive at the office. I knew there was a chance that he wouldn't even show up the next day, but I wasn't going to risk it. I didn't bother turning the lights on because I knew my way around and I was going to be quick in and out. It was when I reached my boss's office that I noticed something very strange. The office chair that was previously behind the desk had been moved and both the box and the passport were missing. I had only been gone for a few minutes, so it seemed plausible that whoever it was might still be inside the building with me, so I was quick to observe the rest of the office.
Oh, you need to call the cops now. Seriously. If something moved and you were the last one in, somebody's there.
Despite the intense moment of silence, I started to feel somewhat relieved to see the same old familiar office that I had grown accustomed to, and there was no other indication that anyone else was there.
What do you mean? The office chair was moved. Like, it's obvious somebody's in there. What are you trying to do? Rationalize?
However, this moment of silence and relief was quickly diminished by a loud thud coming from the supply room. It sounded like something very heavy hitting the floor. As I tried to figure out what could have caused such a loud noise, I suddenly heard the sound of what appeared to be a commotion coming from behind the door. After realizing that someone was in the supply room which required a key to open it, I began to assume that it was my boss or someone else with access to the office.
That's a heck of an assumption. That is a heck of an assumption to make with all what happened up until this point. The car, somebody there, somebody getting into the office at night. I don't know, man.
But as I opened the door, I saw something that I will never forget and continues to haunt my darkest dreams. My knee-jerk reaction caused me to dash out of the office and immediately get to my car. Just as I was about to turn on the ignition, I instinctively looked up and saw the dark silhouette of a man standing by the same window in the office.
Holy crap. And your phone's dead and you can't call the police.
I couldn't see a face, but I knew I was being watched. I turned the key and my heart sank as the engine failed to start. I tried again repeatedly before looking up at the office again, horrified to see that the dark figure had vanished.
Classic horror movie. Oh no.
I gave the key one last turn, and to my relief the engine shuddered to a start. I drove off and headed to the nearest police station. When I arrived there, I told them everything. Thanks to the photo I had taken of the car that was parked outside, along with the partial description of the driver, the police were able to make an arrest, and the driver was identified. Shockingly, it turned out not to be my boss after all, but a relative of his with a violent criminal record. Apparently, my boss wanted to surprise his young girlfriend with a trip to Brazil by inviting her to his office and gifting her with a brand new passport he had arranged. But instead, she wanted to break the whole thing off, and in a fit of desperate rage, he killed her in cold blood and went into hiding.
What? Wow, dude. That was unexpected. So the boss just lost it. God. And the violent brother? What's going on with that? The violent relative?
In an attempt to cover up his crime, he convinced his no-good brother to come by the office to collect the body and dispose of it.
Wow.
I will never forget that night, all the days I could smell her perfume as her lifeless body remained hidden behind the door while I went about my daily job. And the terrifying thought of being alone at night in the office with a violent criminal. I can only imagine what may have occurred had I not left the building or drove away soon enough.
I'll be honest, I thought he was dead when he headed back in.
I consider myself very lucky.
Yeah. Dang. That's a creepy, creepy picture. Oh.
I never saw my boss again after that. In fact, no one did. He became a ghost.
He's
His
in
last
Brazil.
known location was somewhere in Rio, and that was it.
Yeah. He's in
A few
Brazil.
weeks later, I quit my job and started working security at the sub-level of a local hospital. It kind of felt like a step back, and I had serious reservations about working so close to the morgue. But I didn't think anything could be worse than that creepy night at the office.
Oh, but we saw this reaction too, actually, and this was so good. This animated horror flicks did another one about a security job that we already covered, and it was amazing, guys. Listen, I hope y'all really enjoyed this. That was such a creepy story, man. Oh gosh, be careful if you leave in your work at night, guys. Be careful, and keep your phones charged. Good lord, that would have probably saved a lot of grief right there. I hope y'all really enjoyed this one, guys. Make sure to subscribe to Animated Horror Flicks if you guys like the animation, and this channel if you like the reactions. Thanks so much for watching, guys. As always, this is Zueljin signing off, and we'll see you next time.